we'll start off with just the video interaction between Jeff Metcalf and that idiot the other day, and see once again, as Jeff talks to Jake Lang, hear once again the insanity.
Man soul that would have been one of our strongest voices if he was still alive today.
Are you done?
Yes, I am, sir.
I want to point out right there the patience. So you're still seeing some of the white norms. It's this politeness that Jeff is having, even in this instance, where he's obviously furious about this anti-white hustler, Jake Lang. He still says, "Are you done? Go ahead and say everything you got to say. Then I'm going to talk."
Okay, my turn to speak. You are part of the fucking problem, my friend. You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any fucking...
That's called white guilt. No, let it go.
My son, let me finish. I'm giving you time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you. I don't...
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir. You are creating more Austin Metcalfs.
Black man here, you are being weak. I gotta be honest with you about that, sir.
You're being weak. Condemn your son's killer and the culture that caused it.
All right, so a Jake Lang, obviously a scumbag. And since we are the mature heroes in service to white well-being, we demonstrate that we can, we're not going to be divided in this binaural way where it's like, well, or binary way where it is, we've got to be for Jake Lang because we're criticizing Jeff Metcalf. No. We mentioned the other day, this is a piece of shit, this guy right here. You don't talk to somebody who just lost their son this way. This is why I am not trying to talk to Jeff Metcalf. I know what's going on in Jeff Metcalf's mind. I know what's going on in their family's mind because I understand the psychology of anti-whiteism and the effects it has on white people and their thinking. Jeff has already given me, before this day, more than enough signaling of his anti-whiteism to know exactly what's going on. And if you study the Go Free dialogic, you'll know exactly what's going on in the heads of anti-whites as well. It won't be a mystery anymore. Everywhere else you're hearing, it's such a mystery. Why is he behaving like this? And the conclusions that some of them give, wildly erroneous, way off, trying to interpret Jeff through the lens of the spectrum of right and left within the anti-white narrative, which you can very, very easily see in this same story, a la Judge Angela Tucker, that anti-whiteism is on both ends of the spectrum. So you can't immediately say that Jeff is a leftist, that Jeff is a wokey, like some of these. Maybe he is a leftist. That's not our problem. Our problem is his anti-whiteism. His problem is his anti-whiteism. His family's problem is their anti-whiteism. Not the left side of the spectrum per se. It's if you wanted to say anything, if you wanted to drill down, it would be the anti-whiteism on the left. But there's anti-whiteism on the right. Isn't that right, Judge Tucker? Who shut all of her social media down because people are outraged that she gave this clown $250,000 bail, reduced it $750,000, and then this Tony Corey unlimited bail bonds was able to come in and just pay for it all. So what's going on in Jeff Metcalf's head? Jeff Metcalf was reared, like the rest of us, in anti-white hell. He learned from his earliest days anti-whiteism. It came to him in its most potent form through entertainment, where he learned in a way that his brain could not differentiate fiction from reality, exactly how many tears all the non-white races are experiencing. And maybe some of the other privileged groups, like females generally, and other privileged groups out there that, that claim to be victims groups. He's with them in the entertainment, whether it's a book or a movie, etc. He's with them when they are in their secret thoughts. As a consequence, Jeff thinks he knows what they're thinking. No, he knows that he knows what they're thinking, that they're hurting, that they're victimized, that they're scared of the world that the white race has made. Contemplate the totality of anti-whiteism and what it does to the will to life. I mean, much less to the will to exceed, the will to dominate, the will to triumph. How far did Jeff fall beneath his innate talents because of the infection of anti-whiteism? He learns this coming up through his years, all about the world that is actually the anti-white narrative, a fiction and fictionalized narrative that condemns the white race as wicked for all time, an evil seed inside of us, a wickedness for which we all have to make amends to all of the other groups, and in particular, blacks, the most angelized in the anti-white narrative. Perfect, pure, innocent, wrongly put upon. You just head on over to Anacostia and see how perfectly pure and innocent they are. You probably have a city near you where you know the areas that they are perfectly pure and innocent and wrongly put upon, that you would be instantly raped and or murdered if you entered, almost at any time of day. This is what Jeff grew up learning. And he learned that everyone else in his life is thinking that caring about the white race is evil. Everyone else is thinking that concern for white well-being is immoral. So Jeff can mind read with this social morality. When somebody shows up, I mean, in this case, you couldn't be more swarthy and slimy and unctuous than Jake Lang. But if anybody had shown up, they could literally be pure as the driven snow. Jeff would still know that everybody condemns that person as immoral. So these notions that this Bruce Carter is there to tell him what to do, and it's some sort of government op, and the Jews are behind it, and the whole Metcalf family is being told exactly what to do and say and how to behave and everything, is hogwash. They wouldn't need Bruce. Jeff believes, as a consequence of anti-whiteism, that the white race owes the other races, that the white race is less than the other races. It literally has less value because of all the horror that it's inflicted upon the world, that none of the other races have ever been guilty of themselves. What kind of conclusions and deductions are natural when that is your mindset? It's going to be, as it is for all of us, as we are all taught, to one degree or another. And until you address it, you know you're in conflict with yourself. Until you're building those counter triggers like we teach you to do in the Go Free Dialogic, you know you're in conflict with yourself. You know you have felt that internal conflict. You know, when you are doing something right and pure and noble, you don't feel angry and little and afraid. You don't feel like you have to puff your chest out and walk away with your arms out and say, well, fuck this shit. Oh, damn it. You don't feel like you have to do that. You feel that way because you are internally conflicted. This is the reality of anti-whiteism, the psychological warfare and what it has done to the white race. This is why, it's a massive reason why We cannot, with righteous indignation, have conversations with our friends and family that where we are able to assume the moral high ground, hold it authoritatively with our head held high without having to be ugly, and win the day for ourselves and our people. Everyone knows this true who's going to be honest. And I invite you all, as we're talking about this, to tag me and throw in your thoughts about what you believe is going through Jeff Metcalf's mind. What are the natural deductions for the average white person? And we see this in Jeff. I have to make amends. I have to atone. I have to reconcile with these other groups. And if I reconcile, if I redeem myself, I will be able to eke out a little bit more human value than as a typical white person I have. Because in the anti-white narrative, everybody is equal except for the white race. You are valued less. Do you want to know how you can very easily identify that all white people are suffering from this notion that white people are less valuable, that we have less dignity than the other races? White people immediately go to non-white voices that agree with us and hold them up to legitimize our opinions, to legitimize our right to even live, our right to have well-being. You can see it all over the internet every day. You can see it all over your world any day, your cookouts any day, your Wednesday at work any Wednesday. White guy at work says that people should be judged and in reference to white guys getting not being allowed to have promotions because white guys there have been some white promotions already. People should be judged by their work, just like MLK said to all of us. And you know who else? And then they name, and they've got all these non-white people that they can cite when the conversations are between the right wing, which is more capitalistic, and this is the real difference, and the left wing, which is more socialistic. Who does the right wing cite? Jew economists. Who does the left wing cite? Jew economic revolutionaries. And here, of course, I'm talking about the whites on both sides. So white people have learned, and this is the deep psycho-spiritual physical wound that, among other things, we call white noir, which clearly Jeff is suffering deeply from, that the white race is less valuable. It is less legitimate. That our pain, our suffering is illegitimate for us to complain about. We need to be stoic when it comes to our suffering and our pain. We need to never mention it. We need to never mention the suffering of our children, of our women, of our men, because we are less than. It's time for us to be quiet. It's time for us to make amends. It's time for us to attempt to atone. This is a burden that white people carry around in our lives, the totality of our lives. And at different times, it is more or less burdensome. It's always there. It's always this psychological wound. It's always undermining your drive to achieve more, to be more, to have a higher earning, to have a better life, to require that the people around you treat you better than scum. White people will gladly associate with people who are rude and put them down and are verbally abusive, especially the guys, abusive to us because of how little we value ourselves, because we are members of the community of the people that have no value. So as a consequence, what do many white people endeavor to do? They endeavor to eke out a little bit more value than the station that the anti-white narrative has given us. A little bit more value. And how do they do that? Well, they villainy signal anti-whiteism. Sometimes they become hardcore anti-whites. They go on their Facebook and they write, "Happy Kwanzaa." You don't have to say, if Christmas offends you, you don't got to say that then. But I'll be damned if I don't say Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Chinese New Year. You see, I'm a little better than the other whites out there. I have a little bit more value. And who determines whether or not, as a white person, you get a little bit more value? Well, it can't be another white person, because they all have lower value than non-white people. It's got to be non-white people. It's got to be non-white people that give you the approval, that say that you're justified, that you're legitimate, that your opinions are legitimate, that condone your existence. That's this sycophantism that we see among the white race that is so contemptible. This absolute servile nature to non-white people and the anti-white narrative. So Jeff seeks atonement for himself and the white race. Where does that begin on a personal level? It begins with rejecting, to some degree, your own dignity. And that manifests itself in numerous ways, multifarious ways. It begins, to various degrees, with rejecting your identity. How many white people did you grow up with who were white? No, they were skateboarders, or they were emo, or they were jocks, or they were Christians, or they were metalheads into metal music. They weren't white. That's a rejection of your identity. You can't go to other groups of people and get that out of them. At least that's been my experience. You can't go to Carmelo and get that he's something other than black. What else is part of atoning internally? The rejection of your own family. The family, not only of your making, as you're seeing so painfully here with Jeff Metcalf, but also, of course, the family of your origin. It's commonplace in the white race. In fact, the anti-white narrative tells us that it's totally normal for the children to absolutely hate their parents. It's just normal, youthful rebelliousness, you see? They can explain it to you, why your white children come home hating you, hating your music, hating the history of our people, and you, as the parent, older white person, are further back in time and therefore more evil than the current generation. The rebelliousness is normal. That's all it is. So time and again, your entire life, we've watched people reject their families of origin, their parents to one or more, or one degree or another, their siblings to one degree or another, and even here in the family of your making, a son of your own blood that you have brought into this world. You have to reject that as part of your effort to make amends for being white. make amends to all of the harm that you, as a white person, are guilty of inflicting on black people in this case. That's how Austin Metcalf's life has less value to Jeff than it should. That's why you see this ambivalence that is fleeting when it comes to Jeff toward his son, immediately forgiving the killer, the murderer, saying that the murderer made a mistake. I submit to you that if Carmelo were white, Jeff would not have had immediate forgiveness in mind. He would not have immediately said, oh, this was just a minor mistake, murdering my son. Everybody wants to talk about the other direction. If Austin were black, this wouldn't be a story. If the races were reversed, everybody would be in arms across the country because a white guy had murdered a promising black youth that was going to go off into the future and live fabulously wealthy compared to the white working class of this country, live on our backs with a magnificent life while the white race toils away as the lesser valued. Any doubt that we are the lesser valued? Just as an aside, Trump saying certain races can't even talk about the victimized group because they have so little value, because it's so immoral and anti-whiteism, the social morality of the West. This is why, and to take a step back there, to focus on Jeff and how he would have responded, I'll say again, I submit that if Carmelo had been white, Jeff would have been furious. Jeff would not have come out and immediately said, so this is not a Christian issue. Again, so many people are getting this wrong. And if you want to say to me, Jason, how do you know you're right and they're wrong? We produce successes. They've produced generations of failure with their interpretations. Those exact interpretations, generation after generation, everything's getting worse. So we know they're wrong, and you're seeing successes with this dialogic. Which way, Western man? So instead of immediately forgiving and downplaying the murder of his son, Jeff would have lost it. But in reality, it was one of the angelized race. It was a non-white person that the white race has exploited and taken advantage of and harmed since antediluvian times. And Jeff immediately went into atonement mode. You see how this makes sense now? For everyone else, it's a head scratcher, but it makes perfect sense here. So what else comes about? The rejecting of one's own family. That is one of the most salient and acerbic aspects of anti-whiteism. And we see that aspect of anti-whiteism all the time with the victimization of our people. It's everywhere. How many times do we have to see the white girl gets brutally raped by the anti-white mestizo, caves her head in, and the white father is like, yeah, but they make really good food, so I'm happy to have them in the country. Atonement. Got to make amends. This is all easily explained with the Go Free dialogic. And nothing could be more unnatural. That is why so many people on YouTube, on Twitter, etc., are saying, this makes no sense. It's a real head scratcher. What's going through this guy's mind? I understand the Christian aspect. There's no Christian aspect of it. You can put some Christian trappings on it, But as far as the impetus, it's anti-white. What about more broadly, outside of Jeff? What is atonement? Rejecting white identity, rejecting concern or for the welfare of whites. This guy, this anti-white Jew here, Jake Lang, Fed operator, shows up, and Jeff says to this guy, not a Jewish slur, he uses an anti-white slur. He calls them white trash for coming out. He did not use a slur for the murderer of his of his son, the black murderer of his son. He did not use an anti-Jewish slur for Jake Lang. He used an anti-white slur. What story is Jeff in? So white people who are concerned and worried about their being, as Jake Lang is trying to articulate here, because he wants to make dollars off of the white race, or it's part of the Fed op, whatever it is. White people who are concerned for their sons and daughters being harmed. What does Jeff have to say to that? You are trying to create a racial divide. But of course, there already is a racial divide. The handler, the friend that the Metcalfs have brought in, advocates for blacks. And Jeff is fine with that. Remember BMW? That's what Bruce Carter is all about. He's a black nationalist, endeavoring to, at least to be as kind as I can, to elevate black people, and particularly black males. Jeff loves that. People couldn't be more wrong when they say that Bruce Carter has forced himself on the Metcalfs. No. Bruce Carter is a medal to Jeff Metcalf. He is a gleaming medal on the chest of Jeff Metcalf, who is doing everything he can to reject the life of his son, to reject the notion that race was involved, to demonstrate and project to the world that he embraces a black nationalist. It's all the Metcalfs doing. And specifically, we can speak to Jeff. We haven't heard as much from Hunter or Megan. What else is involved for Jeff when trying to atone within this anti-white narrative? The overlooking of slights. That's really at the core of it. And again, we see this in our friends and family, and we see it on the internet, and we see it on television all the time. We can be, as white people, we can be disrespected. We can be ignored. We can be ostracized. We can be condescended to. All of this happens. We can be insulted, deeply insulted. We can be maimed. We can be murdered. And if you're going to atone and get a little bit more value as a white person that is given to you by the non-white people in this anti-white narrative, you have to overlook it all. And so once again, we see another powerful impetus to your average white person to do all that they can to make amends, to be permitted as a white demon to have a little bit more value, to have a non-white person say, yes, you're a little better than all of the rest of the white race and all that they've done. And Bruce Carter being there is doing that for Jeff. Jeff wants him there far more than Bruce Carter could ever want to be in the heart of the Metcalf family, for whatever his motivations are. Approval, to be condoned, to be embraced, to not be insulted, to not be ostracized. He showed up to pray with the Anthony family, Jeff did, because he wanted them to embrace him, to say he's legitimate, he's all right, he's not another evil white person. And here's the worst part about this. The most cutting and painful thing for Jeff, even more, at least from the outside, it seems, than losing his own son. And that is being rejected by the Anthonys. That would have fulfilled for Jeff everything that he's been trying in his whole life to achieve, which is a little bit more value, a tiny bit more dignity for himself as a white male. And he thought to himself, with the sacrifice of his very own son, he should be embraced. With the sacrifice of his boy and the ruination of his other son's life as a consequence of losing his brother in his own arms, Jeff thought he has paid the ultimate price and is due to be accepted as a good white person, allowed to enter the circle of the valuable non-white communities. And he was rejected. I submit to you that that caused him more pain than losing his son, at least in the immediate. The loss of a son, maybe over time, will affect him more grievously, but most acutely, the rejection by the Anthony family is the most painful. Now, what happens to someone when this is their drive? These are the different motivators from their life. There are going to be moments, and you're getting these rejections. There are going to be moments of this fits and starts and antithetical actions. One moment, complaining, maybe even vehemently, that he was insulted by being thrown out. And the next moment, forgiving again. Please, please take me. Please say I'm okay. I've paid for this with my son. I'm willing to overlook that. Understanding Jeff Metcalf's psychology is important, far more important for the bigger picture of who we are dealing with when we talk about our brothers and sisters. Jeff is not an anomaly. He's not a unique case. This is the norm, folks. This, over the course of the years, when I was formulating the Go Free dialogic, I observed in the behavior of our people. I sagaciously tracked down their motivations. I discerned what was legitimate and what was illegitimate from the conclusions or the possibilities. It is with that understanding that we are empowered when we go out into the world, and we go out into our individual lives and bring our people together. This is the psychology that we're dealing with. You don't have people that could be put in places of power under some supreme anomalous leader and everything runs smoothly. You don't have a race of people who care about each other and will, upon hearing that there is a threat to white people or a part of town that is off limits to whites, because if you go there, your life will be extinguished, or maybe what's done to you, you'll wish your life was extinguished. No, these people are not going to rally to some unified resistance. It's never happened across the West. They've never done that. What will the population say? What would Jeff Metcalf say? Can't go into that part of town because you're white? He'll say, I don't believe it. Hasn't happened to him. And then if it does happen to him, it's not race. If it happens to somebody he loves and cares about, it's not about race. There are other reasons. I've learned a panoply of them for why and how this could happen, and it's otherwise just chance. And then if he is Christian, he'll fall back on, it's just the devil. The devil is doing this. This is the white race that you have to keep in mind when you say to yourself, how do we put an end to our victimization? How do we go from this selfishly individualistic, deracinated racial group to a percentage of us seeking individual well-being by way of our group's well-being? Because that, my friends, is the only solution to our victimization. Nothing else. Nothing. It's all Jeff Metcalf's. Some are going to be a little worse. Some are going to be a little better. But that's the psychology, not only behind Jeff Metcalf and the way that he's acting, which seems so bizarre to so many, perfectly clear here. Not just the Jeff Metcalf we're looking at today, but all the Jeff Metcalfs. All the Jessica Metcalfs of the world, to make a female version out of Jeff. This is what you're dealing with. If you have eyes to look, if you really want to make a difference in the world, for our people, for yourself, you're going to realize that everything I'm saying here is perfectly reasonable, perfectly logical. It's demonstrable everywhere we look. You can use my deductions to retrodict and see that without variation, it holds true. And you'll be able to predict with success moving forward. What more evidence do you need?